What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to the NBA Outlet. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron, and regular previewer for us, Nick Kuvala. What's up, guys?
What's up, everybody? How's it going? Raptors are in the finals. Woo!
This is a great moment for Nick. He got to see his team in the NBA finals. Well, he's going to get to see his team in the NBA finals. And now we know who we're seeing. We got Raptors, Warriors, Kawhi, grudge match against the Warriors. Pop is already having dinner with Steve Kerr. Like, oh, my Atlantis.
There's some major T in this one. Nick, give us your excitement level when you watch this happen this weekend.
11 out of 10. Off the charts. Man, I was off the couch. I was screaming. My throat got all raw. Like, ridiculous. I couldn't even believe it. Like, honestly, a minor miracle. Toronto deserved it, man. The city was going wild. I was going wild. Feeling the energy.
It was cool to see history. And also a quick shout out to Nick, who's rocking the OTG t-shirt. You can check that out, Design Tree /Off the Glass. We got that, a couple more. We mentioned a couple more drops. We are going to get you some Warriors and Raptors gear for the finals, so be sure to check that out. And as always, you can check us out iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. But guys, let's dive into what actually, we're going to go storylines first, but what are you most excited about in the NBA finals?
Like, the NBA Finals, to me, right now, it's all about Kawhi Leonard. His run has been historic. What can he put up against, like, a dynasty, a dynastic franchise? This team, Golden State's seen it all before. What can the Raptors bring to the table? It's been all Golden State Warriors, Cavs the past few years. And now, finally, we get a little switch up, and I'm intrigued. Like, is this going to be the hardest team the Warriors have faced in the finals? The easiest? It's difficult to say because the Raptors have never been here before, and that, like, makes them a wild card. So, unpredictable. I'm looking forward to it.
So what am I excited about?
Most excited about, yeah.
I think kind of picking off what Nick said, I'm most excited for the fact that we have a different NBA Finals. We obviously had the LeBron versus the Warriors saga the last 4 years, with the Cavs only winning one of those titles, of course. And now we get new blood, like Nick mentioned. Raptors never getting to this stage before. I think it's more like the Cinderella story in a sense. If you look at the Raptors like last 6 years, it's like a tormented fan base because of the lack of playoff success.
And those have been our best 6 years. Best.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the tormenting is good, right? When you get to this stage. But for me, it's probably the thing I'm most excited about is that we have just a new team. We got guys who haven't been there before. A lot of these guys, possibly Marc Gasol's last chance to get a ring, maybe Kyle Lowry's last chance to get a ring because of their age. So, like, that's another wrinkle. I'm just excited that we have something different this year to end the season.
Yeah, I think something different. And then I also am happy about the fact is, like, this Raptors team is actually going to make the finals probably competitive. Where the last 2 years going against Cleveland, we're just like, LeBron can do a lot, but he really can't beat them by himself, especially after they added KD. Now you look at this Raptors team and you're like, all right, there's some level of excitement. Maybe they could possibly pull the upset. I know obviously the Warriors are still big favorites, and we're going to talk about that, but it's exciting having a team that's really, really good. And it's cool for the Raptors and their fan base and the history. And then Masai taking the giant risk. Like, it was a giant risk trading for Kawhi and not knowing if he would stay or what it would do or if they got here. And it paid off to the highest extent because they changed their franchise's directory. So
yeah, so the people saying that, we still have to see if it pans out, that trade has panned out. Like, let me tell you, another season or two of, like, DeMar's mediocrity and, getting bounced in the second round, I would trade 1 season of Kawhi Leonard in this finals run for 4 more years of that. That trade is already well worth it.
I agree. I think they got to the finals. They changed the history of the franchise, and they have a chance to win. It's not a big chance, but they do have a chance to win. But moving on from there, top storylines of the NBA Finals. There's a lot.
Like the reintegration of KD and Cousins, right? So, like, it's fascinating. They were taken off this Warriors team and they still went off to sweep the Blazers. So I think, like, this team has now developed they're settling back into their 73-win core rhythm. You kind of see it on the floor, a little bit faster paced, a little bit more spacing, operating more through Draymond, right? His stats last series were nuts. 17, 12, and 9, ridiculous. And so the Warriors are going to have to welcome back, essentially, KD. And, that's not too big of a deal. They've played with him now. But now Cousins, like, if he's going to command some minutes, this is going to be some pretty unique juggling done by Steve Kerr. That, to me, is one of the more major storylines from a Warriors perspective. From the Raptors, obviously, how's Kawhi going to handle Golden State's defense? Everyone's been saying that the Raptors have a better defense than Golden State. But when they turn it on, like it's still extremely limiting. And if they know that if they're going to hone in on Kawhi and force the rest of the Raptors to beat them, can the rest of the Raptors roster step up?
Yeah, I mean, this is there's tons of storylines, right? So the one storyline is how long. Well, the injury storyline. What is Iggy going to look like? What is Durant going to look like? What is Cousins going to look like? And then on the same side, like how healthy does Kawhi get? Obviously, he is handling some sort of quad injury or hamstring injury, whatever the case may be. Siakam had the calf injury as well. I think Danny Green is hurt. I mentioned this before. I think Danny Green is hurt. He didn't play the last 7 minutes against the 76ers in the semifinals, and then just hasn't been good this series. And this is a guy who always plays through injuries. So for me, it's injuries. And then just, what can we see history? The storyline of the fact they're going for a three-peat, the fact that there's only been a handful of teams in NBA history who have been able to pull off the three-peat. Can they do it without having these stars? And then on the flip side, can the Raptors win their first ever title? The storyline of Kawhi in his first season, Nick Nurse in his first season as the head coach, like a lot of first-year guys with this Raptors team. Guys, you got the deadline and Marc Gasol, who really knew what you were going to get from Marc Gasol. Obviously, you planned on getting his defensive abilities and his passing abilities from center position. But whenever you get a guy at the midpoint in the season, you don't really know how it's going to pan out. So how does this collaboration of talent the Raptors have, how does that work out?
Yeah, you guys pretty much nailed them all. I mean, there's a couple more for me. I think the one thing that really intrigues me is like best player in the world. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks as a Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry as a dark horse. I think that's something that's really intriguing. Then legacy-wise, it's been talked about a lot. Steph needing to have a big NBA Finals. He's been on a tear. Kory's mentioned the last couple of shows. And then Kawhi, if he was able to win a championship with the Raptors, coming over to the East and winning that, it would be really big for his career because he did a lot to get them here. Then, like you guys mentioned, health. I think coaching and experience is something really interesting. And then overall, obviously, this has been something I'd mentioned on like every preview is just off-season impact. Could this impact somebody where they're going to sign? And that goes for Golden State and it goes for Toronto. So a lot of really, really good storylines. Anything we missed, fellas?
Now, I think your two are the ones actually I'm intrigued about most. So it's funny I didn't mention them. The off-season ramifications this series will have, and then the who is the best player in the world. Because I think a lot of people are going to have their minds made up when this NBA Finals is all said and done.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a seesaw from each series to series. You got KD on one side, Kawhi on one side, going up and down. Yeah. So it's like, all right, Kawhi wins for the Raptors. I think it's really easy to say he's the best player in the NBA. If the Warriors win and Kevin Durant doesn't have a big series, it could also help Kawhi's argument as well. So I'm really intrigued by that. And then also, like, if the Warriors were to lose and let's say Klay Thompson doesn't get enough shots and he's upset, maybe he leaves, or maybe Kevin Durant getting some issues, or same thing with Cousins. And Nick mentioned Cousins. What is he going to be this series? Like, it's really, really hard for Steve Kerr to try to integrate these guys after they just swept somebody in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and like from Cousins, the Cousins thing is particularly interesting just because like Cousins is essentially coming, he's wanting to play in these finals for money, right? Like this is strictly off-season, what kind of a contract can I command, right? If I show my potential suitors that I can suit up for 10, 15 minutes and, contribute to a finals team, that looks a whole lot better than just sitting out the rest of the season. But then how does Steve Kerr value that? He goes to the coach and he says, Steve, like I would like these minutes, I'm back and I just tore the quad, before that, the torn Achilles, like how much does Steve Kerr really want to put into DeMarcus Cousins at this point? I think that's gonna be interesting to see. As far as this series, KD versus Kawhi, you have to remember that KD's gonna for sure miss some games. Game 1 is confirmed he's not gonna be there, and then I've seen speculation that he might not make it back till game 3, 4. So if that's getting cut short, it'll likely have to be a different Warrior that probably steps up and wins Finals MVP. And you mentioned Steph as a dark horse, but he could very likely at the end of the series, Steph Curry could be the guy that's on everybody's minds as best player in the world.
Yeah, I think he's definitely, like we talked about in the last NBA Outlet, it was, leaning towards Kawhi at the moment because KD's out with injury, but Steph's been right there, especially with just the impact he's had on the overall team. And it's just like he brings some type of vibe to the Warriors that Kevin Durant doesn't.
Yeah.
So I'm really pumped, actually. I'm really pumped for the finals. I think last year we were not very excited. Going to it, we knew the Cavs weren't really going to do much. We felt like the Western Conference Finals being the Rockets and the Warriors was the series right there. This year it feels like this is actually the series. So really big. And then moving on from there, this is kind of almost a storyline. Key matchups. Obviously, we got Lowry, Curry, Green, Klay Thompson, Kawhi, KD, Siakam, and Draymond Green. Gasol / Cousins maybe. What matchups are you most looking forward to, and you think will impact the series the most?
I can't wait to see Kawhi versus healthy KD. I just want to see those two guys going at it. Like, that is going to be just seismic proportions. Like, immovable object, unstoppable force, baby. Like, two best players on the planet going head to head. Curry versus Lowry. I think Lowry's going to get toast personally. Like, he's a good defender. He's an above average guard defender, but like with Curry, you have to be locked down or it's nothing, or else the rest of it is more or less the same on a spectrum. Like, so Klay Thompson, Danny Green. I think Danny Green will do a successful job mirroring Thompson. Like, I really hope he finds his shooting stroke this series. I can't imagine that he'll continue to shoot cold. Like, this guy, he's a vet. He's definitely putting in the work. I'd be really surprised if his stroke is just that broken, like in that much of a funk. So the matchup to me is like, it just comes back down to that small forward spot. And then I guess Iggy and Norman Powell. If I had to say one that we haven't mentioned, Iggy and Norman Powell is like the bench unit, the bench wings, how they match up. Going to be something to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, you went through pretty much every matchup. I think obviously the Kawhi and Durant one is going to be what everyone is looking at the most and talking about the most, is how do these two players mirror each other. And then for me personally, like, I'm looking forward to Lowry and Curry. Now, obviously, I do think Curry is the better player and should, in a lot of ways, dominate this matchup. I think he's just a little bit quicker than Kyle Lowry.
That's better than Kyle Lowry?
Yeah, right. Hot take.
Not at taking charges and getting loose balls.
Well, Kyle Lowry's a really good defender, and what I'm more so feeling is, how does Curry limit Lowry? So I think on the offensive side, I don't think necessarily Curry. I mean, obviously Curry's a nagging defender, and actually probably a below-rated defender in a lot of ways. He's not as bad as people make him sound. Obviously, he's a little bit weak, so certain guys can beat him. But I think Lowry, can he take advantage? I mean, he was really hot this last round, crucial to the fact that Toronto were able to get past the Bucks. The fact that Lowry was so efficient scoring, facilitating, rebounding, just doing it all. So can he make some sort of impact going against arguably a top 5 player in the league? And then, of course, Siakam and Draymond to me is really intriguing too, because I think, obviously the Raptors need Siakam, especially in this series. They kind of got away with it last series with him not being as good against the Bucks, but they really need him to be dominant. And then obviously Draymond's such a good defender, such a good playmaker. How does that matchup work? And then I think bench units overall. Obviously, the Raptors bench, the second half of that Milwaukee Bucks series was tremendous. Van Vliet finally got his stroke going. Serge Ibaka just played some meaningful, impactful minutes. And then Norman Powell, like you mentioned, he's been really good. And then the Warriors bench, they stepped up last series without Durant and Cousins, which we haven't really seen all playoffs or really all year. It was the first time the bench actually took that step forward. So how did the benches? Because that might be a deciding factor.
Dude, the freaking Warriors didn't play Jordan Bell for like majority of the playoffs, and all of a sudden whip him out in the Blazers series, and he's giving them good minutes. So it's just crazy how they kind of get to perform. But I think the Lowry-Curry matchup's really big. One thing that I'm most intrigued about is Lowry obviously is known for drawing charges, offensive fouls, whatever it may be. He's going to be chasing Curry around the court. Can he draw a couple fouls on some of these screens and kind of change the momentum of the game, just disrupt their offense and make them get called for that? I think that's going to be huge. I don't think Lowry's going to be able to really attack Curry, on the other side of the ball, but we can see what happens. Danny Green's going to have to shoot. Like Klay Thompson, we know is going to play good defense. He's going to knock down shots. He might have a cold game, might have a hot game. But if Danny Green plays like he did against the Bucks, like, it's going to really hurt their chances, and Norman Powell's going to probably take a good chunk of his minutes. Obviously, I don't even need to talk about KD and Kawhi because they're both kind of hobbled a little bit. I think Kawhi will be healthier in the series than Kevin Durant will, so maybe that gives them a nod there. You mentioned Siakam and Green. I think that could arguably be the second most important matchup of this series because of how much impact Draymond Green will have. And the fact is Siakam's going to be having to switch a lot because Draymond's going to be setting screens for Curry, Klay, whoever it may be. So it's a lot of pressure on him. And like, I'm not even going to bring up Gasol because I'm not sure what type of minutes he's even going to play, depending on what's going to happen with Steve Kerr, who he's playing out there. My most intrigue, I think, in terms of matchups is small ball lineups. Like, what's the small ball lineup for the Raptors going to be? What's the small ball lineup? Obviously, we know what the Warriors is going to be if they're healthy. So it's like, what do the Raptors throw out there? Are they playing Siakam at center? Are they going to trust Serge Ibaka out there? Are they going to go with, Lowry, Van Vliet, and, Kawhi and Danny Green and then Siakam? Like, what are they going to do? I think, what do you guys think is going to be the small ball lineup that they use against the Warriors to match, the Hampton Five?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I'd probably pull a Green from that lineup. I'd probably roll with something like Lowry, Van Vliet, Powell, like Siakam and Ibaka maybe, just for a little bit more size in the front court. And they both proven that they can space the floor a little bit these playoffs. Siakam not so much as Ibaka recently. But that's probably the small ball lineup I'd roll with. Oh, and sorry, like Kawhi Leonard. I forgot about the superstar. yeah, take Ibaka out of there. Yeah. But anyways, Siakam's center lineups have proven pretty effective for Nick Nurse thus far. And I'd imagine that would be the first thing on his whiteboard. You know, if they're running small ball lineups, you'd want Siakam out there on the floor. He's just so defensively versatile, parked under the paint.
Yeah, I mean, I think small ball wise, ideally it would be Siakam at center just to match up a little bit better with Draymond speed wise. So you would have Siakam, Kawhi, and then depending on how much shooting you have, you know, Kyle Lowry obviously is out there. And then it depends on who's hotter. I think you could see Danny Green or you could see Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell. I mean, if the bench continues to be as productive as they have been, you don't necessarily want to have Danny Green out there necessarily. So I think that depends on how well he plays this series.
The only nod that I think Danny Green has over the other two guys is he's a better defender. Yeah. And he's smarter. He's played against Golden State. And I think ideally, if you're going to that small lineup, you're looking to switch a lot. You know, the Raptors in the previous series, one thing they did so well as a unit was the way they rotated defensive communication. Obviously, it's going to be a little different when you have two lethal shooters out there and possibly three if KD's healthy. So it's just going to be a lot of pressure on Nick Nurse to find out what matchups work early on the series. I almost feel like it's a disadvantage for the Raptors that they're starting the series at home. If I was Toronto, I'd rather start the series on the road because if I lose game one, I don't feel so bad about it. But there's a chance they can lose game one because they're almost trying to feel out Golden State.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you made. But I mean, I think at this point, like in a series like this, they're not really looking for they're not really looking to like chart out the momentum of the series, so to speak. You know, like I think each game is just like, you've got to win this. Like every single game going like you might find a little, yeah, you're right. Like against the Bucks, you might find some comfort in going down 2-0, but knowing that they were meant to win those games, you know, and now you're going to go back home and you've got your two games that you're supposed to win. But I think at this stage of the game, that balancing act may have eroded a little bit. I think Toronto will take getting the finals at home. Speaking of which, those tickets are nuts. I looked into it. They're $1,100 USD for a finals ticket to game one.
What?
Just nuts. $1,100.
That's what happens when you haven't been there, though. That's just like what happens, you know. So, hey, we could start you a GoFundMe if you want. I don't know. We'll get there in time.
No, that's all right. That's okay.
But
just start selling your body, Nick. Go out there.
One of the kidneys is going. Yeah.
What other matchups like that we haven't touched on, or something that you think is really intriguing, or a detail of the matchup that you think could make or break the series, or just have a really big impact?
Yeah, Jordan Bell is the utility man. Is like against Siakam. You know, you might see those two share the court a little bit. In terms of like, yeah, maybe they'll play Bogut a little bit, and then that could coax Gasol out onto the floor, and then I think, if that were to be the situation, those are two, very strong defensive players in the paint. That'd probably slow the game down quite a bit for both teams. Maybe not exactly, again, where they want to go, but I could see both coaches throwing a look in terms of like throwing the big men into the game, because they're both very capable defensively. So we'll see what they give them.
If I was Golden State, I wouldn't want to do that. I think I would want to just keep I want to take Marc Gasol out of the game. Like, he's one of their best players, and if I can keep him off the floor for nothing, like whatever. And then if Marc Gasol's out there, I'll have DeMarcus Cousins, depending on if he's healthy. And if he's not healthy, you brought this up a little bit earlier, Nick. Like, I'm Steve Kerr. Championships are way more important. And like, Cousins probably not going to be back next year. So if he's upset, he's upset. He's still going to walk away with a ring, and he can, cry about it with a ring. But I think that he'll be understanding.
Yeah. The only thing is, oh, sorry, Kory. I just wanted to bring up, like, Milwaukee played the style of basketball they wanted to play against Toronto, right? And Nick Nurse schemed a way to solve it, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that Nick Nurse is going to scheme a way to solve the way Golden State wants to play basketball, but I'm just saying, if Golden State runs with a lot of pace early on and they figure, oh, maybe we're not hitting our shots, we're going to switch it up to a different look. And then maybe that's where the Raptors will get them. Maybe that's where they'll put the centers out on the floor. And Gasol will be decisive in that sort of scenario. But I'm just like, getting away from that, it's hard to see why they'd want to leave their pace and space game behind.
I think a matchup, that might be more important would be like Kevon Looney, depending on who he faces.
Looney, low-key, most underrated person of this like Warriors dynasty of the last few seasons. I swear to God.
Especially this playoff run in particular. I mean, he's made himself easily $6 million more on his next deal off this run alone. So I think how does he utilized? Is he able to stay on the floor and be able to bully around a guy like Ibaka and Marc Gasol, who obviously both those guys play a physical type of defense and boxing out. So I think Kevon Looney could be an interesting matchup depending on what center he's facing, because I think, even if they go small, Kevon Looney moves pretty well for a big man, that even in their small ball lineups, or technically he can run it because he is pretty agile for his size. I think Looney's probably an underrated guy.
Yeah, Looney versus Ibaka, I think, is an interesting matchup because that's where you could see those minutes kind of lined up. And I think he probably has the mobility. It's also a really good screen setter, and that kind of forces, some disruption for you defensively. I'm just really intrigued with what Nick Nurse is going to try to do. And like Nick mentioned, against the Bucks, he did a really good job of kind of throwing them off their game. It's really hard to throw a team off their game when they have so many all-stars. Like, you want to take away one option, they're just going to go to somebody else, and you're kind of screwed. So it's just, some of it's just like you have to outplay them and be better.
Yeah, and especially these early games, like you're playing the depleted Warriors, right? And so if you want to have any shot of pulling out this whole series, as tough as it might sound that you have to beat a 73-win core, realize that this is not the same team, right? This is not Harrison Barnes. They have a lot less depth. You really have to take advantage now. You can't enter this series scared. So the Raptors just got to take advantage.
I think also, if you're the Raptors, what you really want to do is you want to take game one, hopefully game two or whatever, but you want to put the pressure on the Warriors to rush back Durant and Cousins or whoever. So I think that's the best chance for the Raptors to win, is you get these guys who may not be fully healthy, force them into the game, and then not only are they not at 100%, but then maybe the Warriors' continuity gets affected because they have been playing so well with the original core. So I think that's probably one of the best chances the Raptors have, is to take advantage of these games early at home.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to be, a lot of pressure on Steve Kerr about, trying to find the lineups that kind of work. But we do have a question from Adar. Can the Raptors offense keep up with Golden State scoring-wise? They have times when they weren't able to score for about 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, and see, those are the kind of stretches where if that occurs in this series, Golden State is going to probably blow them out in whatever particular game.
I can see the nervousness in Nick's face right now.
Yeah, those exact 2 to 3 minute stretches. I was just telling Nick as we were prepping for the podcast, Toronto cannot go bucket for bucket with Golden State. You just take a brief glance at the scoring contributors for both teams across the playoffs, and the Raptors just don't have that many guys who can consistently contribute double-digit point totals, right? The Warriors have 4 sources of that, 5 sources of that on a given night, right? So if you're trying to go shot for shot with Golden State, it's unlikely that you're going to come out with a W. The Raptors really have to leverage their defensive tools, their defensive potential, and scheming. They are going to have to make a concentrated effort to throw something new at these Warriors defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything Nick said is spot on. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Raptors don't have a high-powered offense. Luckily, though, against the Bucks, we saw this, right? We saw this in Game 6. The Bucks went on a run. The Raptors' offense staggered, but their defense was able to keep them in it until their offense got going again. And they constantly have these droughts where they go, like you said, minutes without scoring, but the defense keeps them in it. Now, this is a little bit of a different opponent because the Warriors are just a well-oiled machine, and they're going to put up, 30, 40 plus threes this game. They're going to be tossing them up. So I think, the Raptors can't trade bucket for bucket. And like Nick said, it's going to lean heavily on their defense if they can create turnovers and stops. I mean, that's probably, we'll get more into specific. Turnovers would probably be the Raptors' best chance. Obviously, the Warriors at times do get very sloppy with the basketball. The Raptors are a good defensive unit team. If they can get some turnovers, that's going to be key.
Yeah, and I think it gets to the point that, Toronto wants to keep the pace up offensively because that's when their offense was working well against the Bucks, but defensively they want to slow it down. They don't want the Warriors to get going in transition. So like you mentioned, turnovers will definitely be an X factor. What are some other X factors for the series?
I mean, yeah, the amount of court time Gasol sees, right? If Gasol can be effective in whatever minutes he's given, that's yet another star player seeing court time for the Raptors, right? Because if he's parked on the bench, your defensive player of the year award winners on the court goes from 2 to 1, you're losing a lot of defensive talent, offensive talent. He's been showing that he can space a little bit, hit some threes, and obviously his passing out of the top of the key is just nuts. So that he's an offense unto himself, basically. So it really depends how much court time will Gasol see. Is Van Vliet going to continue having babies / hitting every three that he puts up? Those threes have looked wet. Perfect arc, don't even touch the rim. If he can keep that shooting groove going on, then maybe the Raptors just might have enough shooting out of the backcourt to match up with the Warriors. But again, that's a tall order.
What do you guys think sorry to cut you off, Nick. What do you guys think Van Vliet's going to do defensively? Who's he going to defend on Golden State?
Yeah, he'd have to hound Curry. He'd have to just hound Curry and, I don't know, pray he doesn't get style.
What'd you say, Kory?
Dellavedova style.
Yeah.
That's his best bet, is trying to aggravate him.
Yeah.
I mean, he is kind of a pesky defender. If I'm him, I'm out there, I'm kind of picking whoever, Curry up full court, just trying to annoy the shit out of him and just trying to take some of his energy.
Yeah.
So,
X factors, right? That's
yep.
what we're talking about. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like I'm still looking at the bench units. I mean, that's still the biggest one for me, especially in these early games where we don't have. I feel like I keep saying the same thing. Where we don't have Durant and Cousins, can McKinney, Quinn Cook, Jordan Bell, all of these guys. Iggy, how healthy is he? Sean Livingston's on his farewell tour now. How do these guys step up? And then can the Raptors bench obviously continue to be playing at such a high level? I think turnovers are going to be crucial. Obviously, the Raptors being a defensive squad and lacking some offensive pop, as Nick mentioned, you got to create turnovers. And then I think free throws could be an interesting part of this game, too. Both teams have guys who can get to the free throw line. I think the Raptors probably have a better chance to get to the free throw line more than the Warriors, only because they're more of an attack the rim type of team compared to the Warriors, who are trying to space the floor as much as possible. And rebounding. I think I might give the edge to the Raptors on the rebounding side of things, too.
That was an area last year in the Western Conference Finals where Houston was able to kind of make up some ground, especially a guy like PJ Tucker just kind of fighting. Pretty much you guys covered most of my X factors. I think an X factor, and this kind of seems crazy, but Kawhi's dominance. Like, how good is Kawhi in this series? We saw him at points against Philly where he was over two defenders hitting mid-range jumpers contested. Like, the Warriors have great defenders, but Kawhi, we saw 2 years ago, he was able to score on them, and he almost led the Spurs to a Game 1 victory over the Warriors. So that series could have been completely different. I think we try to mention it, the pace of the game with transition, what's going to happen, Gasol's impact, like Nick said, and can Siakam and Kyle Lowry both be top 25 players in this series? That's what the Raptors really need. They need these guys to be really good and play their best ball in this series to really have a chance. You look at other things, three-point shooting is just the obvious thing of every playoff series. And how hot does Steph and Klay Thompson get? Like, are they having one of these scorchers where, Klay has one of these games where he drops 40 and he dribbles the ball like 6 times? Does Steph have these moments? Does he continue that momentum we saw in the Western Conference Finals? Like, there's just so many factors in terms of, like, are guys going to play at the same level we just saw? Or are they going to drop off? How's the other team disrupt them?
If I had to guess, if I really had to make a guess this series, I would guess that neither of the backcourts manages to have like a supernova. And if we see like one of those crazy performances, it's gonna come from some like a bottled up ISO game from Kawhi versus KD. There's a part of me that thinks no one's really gonna hit 40 plus points from the backcourts just because of how good both of the defenses are at switching. They both clearly realize that they're the great 3-point shooting teams. They're going to work the best they can to limit that. I think the real scorchers of games, those 50-point triple-double maybe category games, will belong to Durant and Kawhi.
I think it's fair. I think it depends a lot on game plan. I mean, personally, I could see Steph because he can just score even when he's defended well. So that'd be the guy that I would be
in denial from me. But
you got to pray. You got to hope.
Yeah.
What about you, Kory? You see any, like, what do you see as some possible big-time performers if you had to say who's going to, like, pop off in the series?
I mean, I have a feeling it's Curry. I think it's his year. I just think there's a little bit extra juice with him right now. Obviously, never won a Finals MVP throughout these titles he has. The last 5 games, he's got the last 6 games, he's got 5 games over 30 points. One of them he had 0 at halftime and 33 in the second half. The third quarter, Curry has returned, at least against the Blazers it did. For me, I feel like Curry is the guy who has a huge impact. And then on the flip side, I think Kawhi dominates. I feel like we may get a similar – sorry, Nick, this isn't going to be an answer you like. But I feel like we're going to kind of have like the LeBron James when Kyrie got hurt in the NBA Finals performance, where he literally just went off every game and did a little bit of everything and was completely going like one-man army style with just some – contributions and pesky defense from like Dellavedova and stuff. I feel like Kawhi goes off and Curry goes off. Not necessarily sure it's enough for the Raptors.
Yeah, obviously, because there's only one guy on Toronto, and then Golden State has everybody. But what are some other factors in the series that we haven't mentioned? Anything you guys think we need to touch on?
I mean, when Golden State's trotting out their like mostly bench units, and of course, like you're not going to see really all bench lineups in the playoffs when the rotations are only like 8 or 9 deep. I know Golden State's been going a little bit deeper than usual, but they're going to shore that up again when the minutes start to come back from Durant and Cousins and Iggy. So, I mean, Toronto really has to. Their bench has to like severely outclass the rest of the non-stars on Golden State. Like, there's just no scenario where Toronto wins a championship where Golden State's bench, like, even even within range of Toronto's. Like they have to blow them out. Like in the minutes where both teams' bench members are seeing a lot of time, they have to win that decisively.
I think the last X factor for me would probably be coaching, right? Obviously, this is Nick Nurse's first year as a head coach, and it's been a hell of a year. And the last head coach to win a title in his first year coaching was the guy he's facing, Steve Kerr. And Steve Kerr obviously has been here numerous times already as a player and as a coach. Was out to dinner, as I mentioned when we started the show, with Coach Popovich, obviously getting some insight on how to try and limit Kawhi Leonard. But I think coaching is a big deal. How does Nick Nurse handle some of these droughts where his offense can't score and the Warriors are just putting up 15 plus points? How does he handle late game situations when you have so many guys on the Warriors who can take that game winning shot or that final shot? How do you stagger the minutes, as we mentioned, with the bench units? How small do you go against the Warriors' death lineup? And if you're the Warriors, do you dare play a bigger size game and give Toronto the ability to use a Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka for stretches? So I think coaching could be a huge factor in this, because it was last round when the Eastern Conference Finals. I think Nick Nurse coached the shit out of Mike Budenholzer those last 4 games.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be the adjustments. And how creative can Nick Nurse be to throw something at Golden State that they've never seen before? Something that just will disrupt them. And what you're trying to do, you're not going to stop Golden State. But if you can screw them up for 10 possessions, that's 10 possessions they're not scoring, and they'll give you the opportunity you need to win. And talking about mistakes, I think mental mistakes, we constantly see this about teams that face Golden State. Saw this in the Houston series, saw this in the Blazers series. There's moments in the game where you just make that one mental mistake that allows Steph Curry to get open 3, or you allow them to get out in transition, where you just need to be locked in, engaged, and focused for the entire 48 minutes. One play can make a difference in the series and allow Golden State to get momentum, because they're that type of team where it all it takes is a little rhythm and then they're popping off.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot the biggest X factor is Drake, right? I mean, how is he able to get in the heads of Draymond and give him like an extra tech or two? Like, who knows?
Drake isn't doing anything this series. He has 30 and 35 tattooed on his body. So like this guy, he's pledging 2 allegiances here. Like,
he's got to pull the Del Curry and get the split jersey. One side Raptors, one side Warriors, like he did for the Blazers series.
He's losing friends after this series.
I would agree. That's a possibility. All right, guys. Anything else you want to touch on before we get into the predictions?
I think we killed.
We've really cannibalized this.
Yeah.
It's nice not to be talking about LeBron for the X year in a row. I'll say that much. Like as desperate as this, as bleak as this might look for Toronto, it is nice. It's really great. I mean, personally, for me as a fan.
Yeah, I think it definitely is more intriguing. Do you guys take? People have brought this up on Twitter. Does this hurt LeBron's legacy in the sense that he was able to get to the finals every year, and now Kawhi comes over 1 year and he's able to go to the finals?
I mean, for me, not really. This supporting cast, if you gave LeBron this supporting cast, he'd get to the finals. Like, no problem.
Yeah, and I think he's a little bit different, too, because, I mean, when LeBron went back to Cleveland, for example, it's when he switched ties. I mean, who really knew what Cleveland was going to be, right, with Kevin Love and obviously he got Kevin Love too, so it was new pieces. Kawhi came to a team besides Danny Green that was pretty much constructed. I mean, Lowry's been there. Siakam obviously was up and coming. Danny Green's been in the league for a while. And then you traded for a guy like Marc Gasol. Like, I think the experience for Toronto is a little bit different. They had a lot of experience on this team with Kawhi being added. I don't think it hurts LeBron's legacy at all.
All right. Yeah, I don't either. I just had to ask the question. Predictions. What are we rolling with?
Raptors.
I'm really interested, Nick. How are you gonna go full bias, or are you going like impartial?
No, hear me out.
I'll defend Nick in the sense that if the Nets are ever in the finals, I'm not picking them to lose. Like, it's just not gonna happen. I'm not gonna pick my team to lose in a championship game and know that I'm gonna be depressed. Like, no. So if he picks the Raptors, I support that.
We've come this far. You gotta have faith. But here's my thing. I think Raptors are gonna lose game 1, right? Because what's more quintessential than Raptors losing game 1, right? So Raptors lose game 1, win game 2, steal game 3, lose game 4. We're at 2-2. Win game 5, lose game 6, win game 7. So that's my chart to the championship.
He's got a game by game planned out.
I like how he was giving his prediction and Nick was like low key sipping on the drink.
if only if it was tea. No.
I'm going with Warriors in 6. I think the Raptors take either game 1 or game 2. I'm not really sure which one necessarily. I feel like they win game 1 only because I think even though both teams are getting some days off, I think the Warriors having such a big time off, I think it does affect your game speed. Raptors had, I think, more momentum. They've had a tougher road to a degree with the fact that they've had some deep playoff game or some, Philly wasn't easy and the Bucks weren't easy. So I think they split there, and I think they probably split. I think they probably take game 3 if I had to guess. First game back in Oracle, and then Durant probably comes back, and then we're looking at the Warriors finishing this off in 6.
Everything really, I do want to pick the Raptors here. I really do, but I rolled with them from the start, and I picked this finals back in February, but I have to go with Golden State. I'd be lying to myself, and I ain't even trying to be mean. Kevin Durant doesn't play this whole series. I'm probably still rolling Golden State.
Yeah.
That's just how good Steph has been, and I think, if I'm a Raptors fan, I'm really scared about Steph Curry. Steph has not played this well this deep into the playoffs. This is a historical run for him. And as good as Kyle Lowry is defensively and all the other players are defensively on the Raptors, unless they're going to put Kawhi on Steph, I don't know if they're going to be able to really slow him down.
And I don't even think that's necessarily I feel like Curry's quick. I mean, I don't think it's bad, but if Kawhi's got a hobbled leg and Curry's just dribbling around, I think that's a tough defensive assignment for Kawhi. Not that he couldn't handle it because it's the claw.
I think one thing that I've stuck out for me for Kawhi in general in this playoff defensively, he is probably one of the strongest players in the entire NBA.
Oh, yeah.
He brick walled Giannis so many times where Giannis usually is going through somebody, where Giannis was short on a layup because he just got a light bump from Kawhi and it just stonewalled him. Nick, are you okay?
The guy's made of granite. But I mean, you're bringing up Steph Curry, and I found some Kyle Lowry copy pasta from Reddit. And I mean, there's a bit too much swearing to say in the live thing, but it does echo my sentiment well. So maybe I'll tweet this out in a little bit. But
I think Lowry's best.
Lowry ain't no spot up shooter. He ain't got to run to the corner to shoot like he's some third option.
I think Lowry, what he would have to do is just get really physical and try to just body him and go back to grit and grind that we saw in the Memphis series a couple years ago. And then even, Marcus Sol knows about that. And then even a little bit from Houston series last year where they were just really physical with them the entire game. But it's tough because they're not necessarily the biggest backcourt in Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, if you're rolling those two guys out there in different lineups.
Yeah.
Are you ready, though, for the ESPN stories that will roll out about is this the end of the Warriors dynasty if the Raptors go up 2-0? In my dreams, if the Raptors go up 2-0, I see all the major sports outlets blowing this out of proportion. Completely the end of days.
I would actually think it would be really – I mean, I hate to say this thing. It would be really cool if the Warriors went down 2-0 and then they just came back and won 4 straight.
See,
no, we just did that.
It's funny you say that. We were sitting here talking and I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, how funny would it be if the Warriors go down 3-1 in the finals and they come back on some crazy run and they end up winning in Toronto in a game 7 and then Drake's got a Warrior shirt on court celebrating with his buddies.
He rips off the Raptors Kawhi jersey.
He got Durant Curry shirt on underneath it.
Better yet, he rips off his shirt. He has a fucking full KD tat.
Oh my god. You guys suck, man.
I do think the Raptors' best chance to win this series is if they take game 1 and game 2. If they go up 2-0, you put some serious pressure on the Warriors. Especially with them being hobbled. That's the best chance for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think if best chance is, Kawhi continues his play, Siakam's really good, and then Kyle Lowry is back to being top 4 point guard, really, really good. What was it, game 1 we saw in the Bucks series where he dropped 30? They would need 3 or 4 of those games from in this series to win. But MVP of the series.
Kawhi Leonard.
Losing or winning?
No. It's because I picked Raptors. I picked Raptors to win it. So, and it almost never goes to a loser, right? So,
just Jerry West.
Yeah,
LeBron had a real chance at it.
Should have been LeBron. If they went to game,
should have been LeBron easily.
If they went to game 7 and lost, LeBron was getting that Finals MVP, I think. But
and no offense to Andre Iguodala that year, it just was Andre Iguodala. It's funny he got Finals MVP and LeBron would drop 40 and 50 on him multiple nights. Yeah, he played really good defense, but he still got scored on at over 50%. But whatever. Yeah. I felt like Steph probably could have even won that one, but that's for a whole nother show. Yeah. Kory, who you got?
This is Curry's. I think this is Stephen Curry's Finals MVP.
Yeah, I agree. And in the hypothetical and the other timeline, which we discussed, where the Warriors go down 2-0 and come back and win 4 straight, I think it's Kevin Durant, because he comes back for game 3 and he just like murders. And then it's like, all right, I'm the best player in the world. Shut up.
Yeah.
That one would be Kevin Durant for sure.
Yeah, that would be the awesome timeline. That happens in another timeline, not here though.
Amazing how he just came into Golden State, swooped all those Finals MVPs, and now he's gonna leave.
Imagine he gets a third. Like, that would be wild.
Curry gets nothing.
It would really hurt too if you're looking back at it. But what are the chances dark horse MVP? Like, what are the chances we say Klay Thompson win Finals MVP, or Draymond Green, or on the Raptors side we see Kyle Lowry, or I don't want to say Siakam because I don't think he has really a chance.
No, to me the biggest dark horse would be Draymond more than Thompson. Yeah, that seems to be the pick. Seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, I think I would go with Draymond. Realistically, I think because Draymond's been so good these playoffs, and I think the defensive impact possibility he has in this series, plus the playmaking, and the newfound shooting stroke. So I think Draymond would be a dark horse. But I also like there's a part of me that thinks Klay Thompson could just all of a sudden explode. I mean, he might have some wiggle room with who his matchup is, because like if they go small and they get like a Fred VanVleet on them, I don't know. Klay,
or they could really even go. They could go with Danny Green on Steph Curry, and put Lowry on Klay Thompson. And Klay's done pretty well attacking a smaller guard. Like Chris Paul was on him a decent amount in the Houston series. That's when I saw probably Klay post up the most of his career, and he looked confident doing it. So Klay wouldn't surprise me. Draymond wouldn't surprise me. And then on the Raptors, they were to win, and Kyle Lowry were to have like 30 points a game, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds. I would not be surprised. We didn't really talk about this enough in matchup, so I just want to bring it up now. How much Draymond Green do we see on Kawhi Leonard? Because personally, I think that might actually be the best defensive matchup for Golden State on Kawhi because of his physical strength.
Yeah, until KD comes back, and even with KD back, depending on how healthy he is, I don't see anybody else you'd really want to throw at Leonard. Like, he's just been offensively superb. He's slashing 50, 38, 88, just crazy efficient, putting up lots of buckets every single game. You're going to want to stick Draymond on him from the get-go. Like, even Iggy, I'm concerned. I don't know if Iggy has enough height or he's a great athlete, but Iggy would be a second choice to Draymond.
Yeah, I think Draymond would be the ideal guy, especially with Durant being out. And then if Iggy's healthy, I think Iggy probably gets majority of the time if he is healthy and Durant's not back. But Draymond's an interesting guy because he is physical, and I think that kind of toughness, he might be able to get underneath Kawhi's skin. Obviously, Kawhi's a robot, so nothing really bothers him. But I think Draymond would be a nice guy to see on Kawhi.
Yeah, so my top 2 choices for defending him would be Draymond and KD, and then Iguodala afterwards. Because I think Iguodala has taken a step back defensively. Yeah. He's just getting up there in age. And then, if you're rolling Draymond and Kawhi, you're putting KD on Siakam, and I think that's a favorable matchup too. So, there's just a lot of matchups where Golden State can give themselves an advantage or take away something that's really, really good for Toronto. That's why I think also it's really important for Kyle Lowry to win whatever matchup he's in, and it's not in his favor to win that matchup.
Yep.
So, Nick, any final thoughts you want to get out there to Raptors Nation or the NBA Nation?
Be thankful you're here. Keep praying. We might get through this with a trophy.
Will you cry if the Raptors lose?
Nah, but I mean,
you had to think about
maybe a little bit. I don't know. We'll see.
I would shed a tear.
If we win, I'm getting a tattoo. So,
let that be known.
Yeah.
Kory, any final thoughts?
The biggest games of this series, I think, are going to be games 1 through 3.
Interesting. And just a quick shout out to us. We will be doing live post-game recaps of every NBA Finals game. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, also on our Twitter feed at OTG Basketball. And then you can follow the show iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube.
Peace out, Knuckleheads.
Peace.